Hello, and welcome back to Kookaburra, where knowledge meets inner wisdom. Today we are going to take another step deeper into our understanding of reality. In the previous video, we explored how our senses collect information from the world around us and how the brain transforms that information into the reality we consciously experience. We discovered that what we perceive is not necessarily reality in its complete form. It is a version of reality decoded and presented to us through our biological senses and our brain. Today, I would like to explore what may be happening behind that visible experience. We are going to talk about what I call the quantum structure of our reality. This is a more advanced subject. If you have arrived at this video without watching the previous parts of the series, I recommend beginning with the first video. The ideas we have already explored: consciousness, the mind, subconscious programming, emotions, and perception provide the foundation for what we are going to discuss today. This subject can appear complicated, so instead of turning it into a physics lecture, I am going to explain it through something I understand very well: traditional black and white photography. Today, most photographs are digital. You take a picture and see it almost immediately on a screen. But traditional photography worked very differently. Before digital cameras, we photographed onto film covered with a light-sensitive emulsion. When light entered the camera, it exposed the film and created what photographers call a latent image. The image was already present on the film, but you could not see it yet. If you opened the camera and exposed the film to ordinary light, you would destroy it. The film first had to be processed chemically. It was placed into a developer. The developer transformed the invisible exposure into a visible image. The film then had to pass through a fixer, which removed the remaining light-sensitive material and made the negative safe to view in normal light. But that negative was still not the final photograph. To create the photograph, we placed the negative into an enlarger. Light passed through the negative and projected its image onto a sheet of photographic paper. Once again, the image appeared to be absent. If you looked at the paper immediately after exposure, it still seemed blank, but the information was already there. The paper contained another latent image. Only when the paper was placed into the developer did the photograph begin to appear. Slowly, shapes emerged. Light and darkness separated. Details became visible. Something that had existed only as hidden information became a photograph we could see and hold. Remember this process, because I am going to use it as a model for what we will explore today. We can think of our experience as having two sides. There is our inner reality, our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, memories, expectations, and imagination. And then there is the external reality we experience through our senses. We see, we hear, we touch, we taste, we smell. Our senses act like sensors. They collect information from the environment. The brain processes and interprets that information, and the result appears within our conscious awareness as the world we experience. But there is another direction to this process. Something can begin within our inner reality and eventually become part of the external world. Look around you. A building, a chair, a painting, a computer, a piece of music. Everything created by human beings existed as an idea before it existed physically. First came a thought, perhaps an image in someone's imagination. Then came intention, planning, decisions, and finally, physical action. Something that began invisibly within the mind eventually appeared in the physical world. Think about something very ordinary, like, for example, preparing a meal. The meal does not really begin when you put the pot on the stove. It begins earlier. First comes the thought, I would like to cook something. Then you decide what you want. Perhaps you can already imagine the meal. You check which ingredients you have. You may write a shopping list. You go to the shop, and eventually you begin cooking. An invisible idea has gradually become a physical experience. This is the basic pattern behind conscious creation: idea, imagination, intention, action, result. In this sense, imagination is not simply an escape from reality. It can be the beginning of creating something that does not yet physically exist. Of course, much of what appears in our imagination comes from information we have already collected. We remember a face, a place, a conversation, something we have seen or read. And the mind can rearrange those pieces into something new. But occasionally, an idea seems to arrive differently. It may appear suddenly, sometimes almost complete. Artists sometimes describe seeing the finished work before they begin. Musicians may hear a melody internally before playing a single note. Inventors sometimes report that a solution suddenly appeared after they stopped consciously searching for it. You may interpret this simply as subconscious processing. I believe there may also be another source, what I call the higher self. For me, this represents a deeper level of consciousness beyond our normal analytical thinking. And sometimes, when the conscious mind becomes quiet enough, information may enter our awareness as intuition, inspiration, or simply a feeling of knowing. Creation can sometimes feel less like inventing something from nothing, and more like discovering a possibility that was already there. Now imagine that I am holding a box containing 100 sheets of black and white photographic paper. Every sheet is exactly the same size. Every sheet is blank. But every sheet contains enormous potential. One could become a landscape, another a portrait, a butterfly, a wedding, a newborn child, a car accident, or a funeral. Before exposure, the paper does not prefer one picture over another. All those photographs exist only as possibilities. The particular photograph that eventually appears depends on what is projected onto the paper. This is how I would like you to imagine an underlying field of possibilities. The blank paper does not yet contain one particular visible reality. It represents potential. But when light passes through the negative and reaches the paper, something changes. One particular possibility has now been selected. A specific pattern has been impressed upon the paper. The image is still invisible, but the latent image is there. Now let us bring this photographic model back to our own lives. Inside us, we carry beliefs, thoughts, memories, expectations, and imagined possibilities. Some are conscious. Others are hidden within the subconscious mind. Together, they influence the picture we carry of ourselves, other people, and the world around us. You could think of this inner picture as the negative inside the photographic enlarger. It influences what is being projected. Imagine someone carrying a deep subconscious belief. I am not worthy of love. They may not even consciously know that belief exists, but it can still influence their life. But emotion strengthens that pattern. This is why I like to say, emotions are the developer of our lives. A thought passing through your mind once may have very little effect, but repeat the same thought every day and attach a powerful emotion to it, and something changes. It begins influencing your inner state, what you notice, how you interpret situations, the decisions you make, how you speak to other people, how you react to opportunities, and how you respond to difficulties. I am not suggesting that emotion magically prints a new house or a new car into existence. Physical creation still involves decisions, action, time, and interaction with the world, but emotion can strengthen the internal pattern guiding those actions. It can keep us moving toward a possibility, or repeatedly pull us away from it. Let us look at a simple example. Imagine you have a minor accident in a car park. Nobody is injured, but both cars are damaged. Immediately, thoughts begin appearing. How much is this going to cost? How long will I be without my car? Why wasn't the other driver paying attention? This is the last thing I need. The accident happened once. Perhaps it lasted only a few seconds, but your mind can recreate it hundreds of times. You replay what happened. You imagine future problems. You argue with the other driver in your head. You blame them. Perhaps you blame yourself. And every repetition produces another emotional reaction. Anger. frustration, anxiety. The physical accident lasted seconds, but emotionally you may continue living inside it for the rest of the day, perhaps for several days. And now that emotional state begins influencing what happens next. You become impatient with your partner. You misunderstand an innocent comment. You make a rushed decision. You failed to notice a simple solution. Or you carry your anger into another situation and create a completely new conflict. The original accident was not created by your anger, but your emotional response can influence what comes next. And now we have a feedback loop: event, emotion, inner state, perception and behavior, next experience. And the next experience produces another emotion. The process continues. This is why two people can experience the same external situation very differently. One sees only danger, another sees a challenge. One sees rejection, another sees redirection. One remains trapped in anger. Another eventually asks, "What can I learn from this?" The external event may be the same, but the inner picture through which it is interpreted is different. Think back to the parking accident. The accident itself was an external event, but the thoughts that followed, "This should not have happened," "My whole day is ruined," or "Why do these things always happen to me?" created frustration, anger, fear, or helplessness. Negative thoughts generate negative emotions. Those emotions then influence the thoughts that follow, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. The more attention and energy we give that cycle, the longer we remain aligned with its emotional frequency. But the same event can be interpreted differently. No one was seriously hurt. This can be repaired. What can I learn from this? What is the wisest thing I can do now? These thoughts do not deny what happened. They change our relationship with it, and therefore change the emotional state from which we respond. Our personal reality emerges from the interaction of many things: the physical world around us, the information collected by our senses, the way our brain interprets that information, our thoughts, our memories, our subconscious programming, our expectations, our emotional state, the frequency we consistently radiate, and finally, the decisions and actions that follow. Every emotion carries its own frequency. Fear, anger, shame, and resentment keep us attuned to experiences that resonate with those states. Love, gratitude, trust, and inner peace tune us to a different range of possibilities. This emotional frequency acts like a magnet. It influences what we notice, what we expect, how we respond, whom we connect with, and what kinds of experiences we repeatedly invite into our lives. The frequency we sustain within us tends to attract and strengthen experiences of a similar frequency. This creates a continuous feedback loop. Our thoughts generate emotions. Our emotions shape the frequency we radiate. That frequency influences what we notice and attract. Those experiences then reinforce our original thoughts and beliefs. The parking accident can therefore become more than a single unpleasant event. If we repeatedly replay it with anger, blame, and fear, we continue carrying its frequency into new situations. We may become more tense, notice more problems, react more sharply, and unknowingly create further conflict. But when we consciously change the meaning we give the event, we interrupt the cycle. The accident remains part of what happened, but it no longer has to determine what happens next. This does not mean that we control every external event or that negative experiences are our fault. It means that we can influence what we continue to energize and which inner state guides our next decision. So we are not only simply receiving reality. Through our thoughts, perceptions, beliefs, emotions, frequency, decisions, and actions, we are also participating in and magnetizing the reality we experience. When I talk about raising consciousness, I am not suggesting that we should deny pain or pretend that everything is wonderful. Being conscious does not mean smiling while something inside you is suffering. It means becoming more aware of what is happening within you. recognizing the internal pattern before automatically projecting it into the next situation. You cannot always choose what happens to you, but you can gradually become more conscious of what happens inside you afterward. You can notice the thoughts appearing after the parking accident. You can recognize your anger without feeding it for the rest of the day. You can deal with the practical problem without allowing one event to control your entire inner world. You might simply say, "Yes, this is inconvenient. Yes, I am upset. But I don't need to turn one accident into 10 more problems." That is not denial. That is conscious participation in what happens next. And this is probably the most important idea I want you to take from this video. You are not simply a passive observer of your life. You participate in the reality you experience through your attention, your beliefs, your emotional responses, your decisions, and your actions. Your subconscious programming may have created many latent images without your conscious awareness. But once you begin recognizing those images, something important changes. You no longer have to develop every one of them. You can stop and ask, "Is this really the picture I want to continue creating? Does this belief still belong to me? Am I responding to what is happening now? Or am I developing an image created many years ago?" Awareness gives you an opportunity to interrupt the automatic process, and that is where conscious creation begins. Today, I have given you a photographic model for understanding this process. Think of the unexposed photographic paper as potential. Your beliefs, thoughts, and imagination form the image being projected. Repetition impresses that image more deeply. Emotion acts like the developer, strengthening the pattern and helping it influence the reality you experience. And through perception, decisions, and action, the internal picture can begin influencing what happens next. But now, a much bigger question appears. If our inner state influences what we experience next, how much of this process happens unconsciously? And more importantly, can we deliberately change the image before it becomes our experience? That is where we will continue in the next video. But until then, I want to leave you with one simple principle, something I personally think of as an axiom. Don't look in a direction you don't want to go, and don't think about things you don't want. It sounds simple, but anyone who has ever tried to stop worrying, stop expecting something to go wrong, or stop replaying an unwanted situation knows that it is not always so easy. Why? Because much of the picture may already be coming from somewhere deeper than our conscious thoughts. So in the next video, we are going to look at exactly that. Where do these unwanted pictures come from? Why do they keep returning even when we consciously want something different? And can we begin changing them before they become part of our experience? Until then, simply observe. Notice the pictures you repeatedly create in your mind. Notice the beliefs behind them, and especially notice the emotions you use to develop them. Because once you become aware of the picture, you may also discover that you have much more influence over its development than you realized. This is Kookaburra, where knowledge meets inner wisdom.